Welcome, g'day, bonjour, malole, talafalava, kia ora na. What are the greetings there? Anyway, welcome, folks. Welcome, greetings. And look, a pleasant time to have you guys around here for Ram It Up. And I'm actually joined by very good friend, Warriors NRL Fanatics. For many of you guys here, you probably don't know, particularly because it's obviously SA focused. You guys wouldn't know who he is. So, Fanatics, please let us know, who are you, man? What do you do, and what has been happening, my friend?
Yeah, so I run a New Zealand Warriors NRL YouTube channel, which is called Warriors NRL Fanatics. I've been doing this for quite some time, since 2020, since the COVID period, and of course me and Ram It Up, I'll say. We used to do a lot of content together over the years, but yeah, it's great to jump on. And I do New Zealand Warriors content, purely NRL, and as you guys, this channel is based on Adelaide in South Australia. So yeah, hopefully you guys can get a team back and running in the NRL real soon. So yeah, I'm sure that's the plan and the focus of this channel and hope for the future. But yeah, it's good to be here talking international rugby league.
And absolutely, and look, man, no other co-hosts I'd rather have talking international rugby league than you. But in saying that, guys, we're in for a barnstorming show, and apologies again for the late delay. And as sort of Fanatic sort of reference to as well, guys, he spoke about having me on his shows, and we're talking about years gone by. I also used to have a channel called Hold the Ball, no longer existing. But if you want to go and check out my stuff, my archives, any of that stuff, please feel free to on YouTube. But anyway, we are here. We are live, and welcome again. So we're going to go straight into it. All right, Fanatics. So Fanatics and I, we've been talking, we've been debating, we've been chatting about the international window. Obviously, we all know that an international window is primarily at the end of the season. Well, Fanatics and I have been sort of pondering a little bit here and there regarding the international season, and should it actually be played mid-season? So, Fanatics, the question is, should the international window be during season, aka NRL, aka Super League, or keep it as is? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, look, I think the at the moment, the way that we have the schedule in terms of international rugby league, I think it needs to be a lot better. And I feel like, with when we have the origin period, right? Generally there's always other NRL games played during that week, and those teams are really much weakened. I know a lot of people, are fans of watching some of the younger players play and get the opportunity, and I'm one of them too. But in saying that, I feel like we could probably do the international period during that NRL during that state of origin period, instead of having all those teams playing. Have those teams on the bye and just play, your international games during that period, like your Fiji, Samoa, Tonga. Those players who can't play Origin, have an international window there. Um, I know there'll be a debate for having it against during that period, and there's some people that may like it during that period, like me. But I think having it this back end of the season, after the NRL is just finished, people are just. Some people may just clock out, after the NRL season's over. Some people may not even know that International Rugby League is on. Some people may look at it and say, look, is International League on? I didn't even know that. Some people might have just clocked off after the NRL season. So, and plus, of course, you got players coming off, a fatigued NRL season. There'll be injuries and players pulling out, and it just, sort of makes the spectacle a little bit, maybe less, I don't know, of people wanting to watch it. But I think the international fixtures, having it at the start or at the midpoint of the season instead of having it at the back end of the season, I think is a lot better. But that's what I personally think.
Yeah, no, good shout there, actually, Fanatics, and I agree. I agree. And the way I look at it, again, your opinion aside as well, I think personally the mid-season is probably best. Only because, as you know, Fanatics, a lot of fans, I don't know, for better lack of a word, feel fatigued. After the NRL season, they feel fatigued, and They don't want to watch
Yep.
tune into international footy, which is heartbreaking to hear. So I guess, I get what you're saying. And look, for me, I personally prefer mid-season league. Everyone's still at it. Everyone's ready. And obviously, when you sort of throw in more teams, the NRL, I'm pretty sure. I'm hearing rumors they're trying to do 20, but I'm actually hearing rumors they're trying to do 22 teams, allegedly. Allegedly.
Yep.
Geez, I'm all for 20, but 22 teams are stretching. Anyway, that's a topic for another conversation. I won't go down that rabbit hole there. Anyway, next question as well before we get into the international stuff. Should there be a nine circuit fanatics similar to rugby sevens? We'll watch nines. I'm sure we're big fans of nines. We're big
Yep.
proponents of nines. Just a quick little fun fact as well. I believe Sean Johnson is the only player in nines history to only score his tries in the middle of the posts, in the sticks. So anyway, nonetheless, we carry on. Should there be a nine circuit similar to rugby, say from between March and November? A handful of games here, a handful of games there. They don't have to be NRL players. It just has to be rugby, rugby league, international, or NRL, what have you, showcasing their game around the world, a mini format. Fanatics, I sort of threw this on you right on the spot. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, well, this one is definitely throwing me off the spot here. Look, I haven't really had a long thought about it, to be honest, but my thinking is, will it work? Can they make it work? That's the big question. Like, where would you play it? Like, would you have it in certain amount of countries, or would you have it in Australia? Would you have it in New Zealand? Where would
Yep.
you host it? And the money as well that comes with starting up something like this as well. So, with rugby sevens, a lot of money pours into it. World Rugby puts a lot of money into it. Rugby sevens, I think a couple of years ago was great. I think the series, the past couple of years, has not been the best, to be honest. They've sort of, taken off regular slots on the calendar that, are not there anymore. They're changing it up. They're changing the formats. It's a bit silly now and how they've done it. But that's probably based on COVID and it won't go there with the COVID stuff. But, that's based on so many things that financially, which has changed. So, yeah, I do like the rugby league nines. I really did like the concept of it. I know we saw it a couple of years ago. I think it was the World, was it World Cup nines, or we saw
Yep.
it look like a mini tournament sort of thing, and it was played
Yep.
in Australia as well. I think there was a final in Australia with the men's and the women's as well. But yeah, I think the nines is a great concept. I think it could work, but it all depends on how they set it up. It all depends on what they do with the way it's run. For me, if it's the way it's run, if it's run great, if they know how to do it, if they can organise it well, then it can be a success. But if not, then it's probably not going to last long, is it? So yeah, that's what I think. But I think the nines is great, though. It's an awesome. I think it's an awesome way to get into rugby league. Let's say a new follower follows rugby league and they don't know the rules, so they follow some other sport, and they want to show their interest in rugby league. Then I think nines could be something that could introduce them to rugby league. It's probably much more easier to understand if you follow rugby league as a new follower than following it as a different more than the full game, full code. But yeah, I think it'll work, but can it work is the big question. That's just my overall thoughts on it.
Yeah, no, look, I agree with you. I guess I'll add on to that as well, Fanatics. You touched on where you'll tour, and well, look, we weren't talking this too long. I reckon this even deserves a topic on its own, to be fair. But
Yeah.
you can look at places like, obviously, you could tour. Say, for example, you go to Auckland, maybe you go to Go Media Stadium, right?
Yeah.
And then you tour to, say, England. You go to the UK, right? And then you go from there. You go to France. You're playing Paris. You go to Paris. Then then you go to look. Everyone goes to Dubai. Everyone goes to Dubai. You
Yeah.
go to Dubai. Then you go here, go there. But yeah, look. In theory, it sounds great, but obviously, as you touched on, practically, logistics, finances, there's a whole different kettle of fish. But I get it. But be be wary, guys. I'll definitely be bringing this topic up again in some time soon. Anyway, international chat. So,
Oh,
ladies and gents, we had Italy versus Lebanon, and the score was 16 points to 14. At halftime, it was 4 points to 8. Now, again, I believe that for both squads, there was no NRL player, which is fine because honestly, I believe it's more. It's for nations like Italy, Lebanon, it's more rich when you have a team without the players. Obviously, you want the players to attract the fans, etc. But when you have these players here, it's pretty good in the sense of grassroots, if you will. Anyway, tries for Italy went to Jack Pershrelli and Jackson Lenzo, and then for Lebanon went to Mohammed Al Madin and Bilal Al Yusuf, as well as Jonathan Ibrahim. And as I touched on as well, Italy winning that game in a very close encounter in Lycombe Oval, Sydney, 16 points to 14. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, both those teams have already qualified for the Rugby League World Cup. Speaking of Rugby League World Cup, I also had a chat with Fanatics as well, and I gave them a rundown of what's happening. We've got 2 big games happening in October this month,
yep.
as well as in November. So the first game is going to be France hosting Jamaica over at the Stadium Municipal d'Albi over in France. And on the 9th of November, you have the Kokans hosting South Africa over in Sydney, which is very interesting. Very interesting. But nonetheless,
Yes.
the way it is. I will just have a little bit of a, Fanatics likes to call it, sometimes when I sort of go off on a bit of a tangent, but I will sort of go off just a little bit. I'm actually very upset at the Rugby League World Cup, or the International Rugby League Board, for actually only allowing 10 teams in. Fanatics, give me your thoughts on only a 10-team World Cup. We were 16 in 2022,
Yep.
and then instead of going to 20 teams, we've gone down to 10. And I'm not having a dig at our rugby union brothers, really, but I'm praising them. They've actually done a good job going from 20 teams to 24. They've expanded,
Yep.
whereas rugby league, the last thing they needed to do was actually downgrade, and we have. Fanatics, what are your thoughts? 10 teams. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I don't like it. I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan of it, to be honest. Like we had 16 teams, like you said there, and I think 16 is a good number. You know, it's not too much. It's not too less. I think it's perfectly suited. So to have it go down to 10, I don't agree with it. I don't, because you're making less of an opportunity for these teams like France or Jamaica, and only one of them can go through. You know, one of them can only qualify. So unfortunately, one of the others is going to miss out. So I don't necessarily think it's right. I feel like having it as it was before. I don't have an issue with how many it was before. Actually, I think 16 teams wasn't as much as people may think it is a lot. People may look at it and say, oh, because international rugby league's quality is not as great, and having all these other teams in it, and watching them get smashed by 60 or 70 points a game. People might have that debate about it, but yeah, I don't necessarily agree with having it as 10 teams. Like I say, like rugby, I know it's completely off topic, but rugby union has gone up to 24 teams for their next World Cup. They're changing their format a bit, I believe. So, yeah, it's a real shame. It's a real shame that there can only be 10 teams. So, yeah, I don't know. It's disappointing.
Yeah, I agree with you, although I will say I am more a proponent for 20 teams. I get the idea of 16 teams, but I reckon 20 just allows, for example, teams like South Africa. And
Mm.
just a quick little bit of trivia for you guys, unfortunate trivia too, by the way. In South Africa, they actually don't recognize rugby league as a sport, by the way. They actually do not recognize rugby league as a sport. They actually sweep rugby league underneath the rugby union. In other words, if you play rugby league, they just classify you as a rugby union player. They do not recognize it as its own sport.
Yeah.
It's quite political. It's quite degrading. And for a lot of those players who are representing South Africa, it's heartaching. It's heartbreaking in the sense that you're just not really, you're actually not really, I suppose, given a chance to express yourself as a player. But anyway, nonetheless, I digress. We have France and Jamaica playing first up. And I don't want any of these nations to be kicked to lose out. I mean, we all love Jamaica from the last World Cup. Despite them losing, they were the energy of the whole World Cup. They were arguably the best team everyone liked outside of their own team. So, yeah, them and France, and then you have South Africa, Cook Islands. Um, yeah, I agree, Fanatics. It just sucks. It does suck. But anyway, that's what's happening, guys. So be on the lookout for that. Again, in late October, we have France against Jamaica. That's the 25th of this month. And then next month on the 9th, we have Cook Islands hosting South Africa over in Sydney. So, guys, be on the lookout for that. I low-key want South Africa to win, Fanatics. You know, if I could just say that. Anyway, look, if I had it my way, France go through, South Africa goes through. But anyway, we go on. Ashes Tour, ladies and gents, we all know what's happening.
Yep.
The Ashes Tour is back for the first time since 2003, if I'm not mistaken. Actually, 2003, guys. So that's 22 years. Yes, that's 22 years of since the last time we had the Ashes Tour. Australia going, and obviously against England. We're not going to dabble too much at England because their squad is yet to be named. They'll be named after the Super League. But you can imagine the likes of Herbie Farnworth will be in there, Morgan Smithies from the Raiders. You know what I mean? You get what I mean. It'll be their top grade players. But anyway, nonetheless, we're going to the Australian squad here, Fanatics, and Fanatics and myself. We have the squads here, or I can, if you want to talk about it. But what are your thoughts on the Aussie squad before we head into the Pacific teams preview? What are your thoughts on the Aussie squad?
Yeah, so I've got the Australian squad on me. Actually, just going through it. So Josh Adokar, from the Parramatta Eels, and he actually just came. They announced the squad the other day, but he's just been a late inclusion because I think it's Xavier Coates and there's another player that crosses my mind here, but I think he's injured as well. So Josh Adokar comes into the side, Parramatta Eels in. You got Braidman Best as well, another player who's just come in to the side for the Newcastle Knights. And Braidman Best, he actually hasn't played for Australia yet, so he is going to be a debutant. And then you've got Blake Braley as well. So that's I think Blake Braley, if you look at his season, he's been great for the Sharks. He has been the key part of the Sharks and their, running. Well, at the back end of the season, the Sharks are on a really good winning streak. They made the preliminary finals, went down to Melbourne, but they were, written off by a lot of people, including myself. I actually do admit I thought the Sharks weren't going to do a lot come finals time, but Blake Braley's had a great season and it's well deserved. So he's in the side of the Australian. Congratulations to him. You got Patrick Carrigan, of course, from the Broncos, coming off that premiership. Nathan Cleary, Lindsay Collins, Ruben Cotter. You got Angus Crichton, Tommy Dearden, Dylan Edwards, Tino Fasumalawi, Harry Grant, vice captain for the Storm, Keon Kolmatangi, Mitchell Moses, Cameron Munster, Mark Nanganitawase as well, making his potential debut. And then you got Jacob Preston, Jamet Shibasaki as well. What a story Jamet Shibasaki has been this season for the Broncos, man. He was on a trade and trial contract not long ago, and he had a brilliant season for the Broncos. He was awesome. Great talent. A lot of people, there was clubs that didn't want him, and he was on a trade and trial contract, and now he's here, named in the Australian squad, and you got Lindsay Smith, Tony Staggs, Ethan Strange who's had a very strong season for the Raiders. A brilliant year for Ethan Strange as well. I know there's you and me talked about it, about the potential he could play for either Australia, I think New Zealand, and I think it's England. I think you pretty much told me that he could have played for either sides, but he's chosen to play and represent Australia. You got Reece Walsh there, Walshy, Isaiah Yeo, and Hudson Young. And look, that's a very strong Australian squad. They've got so much talent. They've got so much talent in their side at the moment. They can pick. I find it hard when you predict an Australian team who to leave out and who to pick, because there's so many good names in there that it can be unlucky to miss out altogether. So, that Australian squad, I think it's going to be a really tough team to beat. And no matter who they name in this side, they're going to do the job there for the Australian side. But yeah, what do you think of the Australian team, and what do you make of it all? The
Yeah,
debutants, especially.
yeah. Look, I think the Australian team, much like yourself, Fanatics, is a very strong, formidable team, and that's before they've even place the ball down on the ground, right?
Yep.
They're really strong looking team there. You mentioned the likes of Blake Brayley, Shibasaki, Nawakani Tawaze, Koloma Tangi, Faso Maleawi, Hudson Young, Isaiah Reese Walsh, etc., etc. These are fine top of the line players here. Look, you also touched on Edo Carr and Bradman Best coming in to replace Xavier Coates and Lomax there.
Yep.
And I think, look, in my opinion, I think Edo Carr has done enough, to be fair, at the Eels to earn his spot. It's not
Definitely.
every day, though, you sort of skip or not get called for Origin and then play for Australia. But nonetheless, he's done that. So good on him. Very, very good work there. But yeah, look, this team here, and again, we're not going to do any previews or anything like that. But I will say this: on paper, there's just no denying this team here. I mean, Reese Walsh at fullback, I'm imagining, right? I'll pick him ahead of Edwards, Fanatics.
Yeah, yeah. I've actually got my Australian squad.
Go for it. Yeah,
if you
name it,
mind
mate.
me
Name it.
going through it, because
Yeah, you go for it.
I was just going in back and forth with who to pick and who to leave out, but this is the side that, in my opinion, I've gone with. So I've actually gone Reece Walsh over Dylan Edwards. Yeah, and I think that he deserves to get in and start, because you look at his form. Clyde Churchill medalist on the NRL Grand Final. Just look at the performances at the back end of the season, helping Bronx to a Grand Final and a premiership. And so he's my fullback. On the wing, I've gone with Mark Nanganitawase. I think he will get his debut in that first game. And in my centres, I'm going to go with something. I'm going something very different. I don't know how many people agree with me on this one or disagree, but I'm actually going to go with Jamin Shibasaki. Jamin Shibasaki, the two Broncos players, to partner each other in the centres. So I've got Jamin Shibasaki and Kotoni Staggs. Those are my centre pairings. Then Josh Adokar on the wing. And Cameron Munster, 5'8", with Nathan Cleary halfback. Then my prop will be Tino Fasumalawi and Harry Grant, vice captain and hooker. And Patrick Carrigan will play prop there, with Hudson Young in my second row with Angus Crichton, and my lock is Isaiah Yeo. So my bench will be Tom Dearden, so he takes the 14 spot. 15, I've gone with Ruben Cotter. 16, I've gone with Lindsay Collins. And my 17, I've gone with Keon Koa Matangi. And that is my Australian side.
I like it. I like it, Fanatics. It's got everything. It's got a bit of youth, a bit of experience, but just overall hardened, steeled players who just know what to do. So I think I think to be fair, the Fanatics Australia squad, and I'm not going to touch too much on this. We'll get into the Pacific very soon. The headliner of the show. I think Australia squad, you can't go wrong either way. Yeah, you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Even if you say, for example, even if the coach, even if Walters wanted to select Edwards ahead of Walsh, you couldn't go wrong there. Even if you wanted to put in Crichton on bench and Young starting, you couldn't go wrong there. Even if you went with Dearden and Munster in the halves, you can't go wrong there. You know what I mean? They're such a good team that whatever you do, look, I think you can read in between the lines there. Australia we have a good squad. Anyway, all good. Now, guys, Pacific team previews. Now, before we get into the main event of Tonga, Samoa, and New Zealand, we're going to just have a quick little shout out here to these nations here in the Pacific Bowl. Papua New Guinea, Fiji, as well as Cook Islands. They'll be featuring Fiji, and Cook Islands have named their squad. There are some key outs for Fiji, some key outs for Cook Islands. Papua New Guinea yet to name their squad. But nonetheless, we will still be watching their games, I'm sure. And Fanatics and I will hopefully be back on again, actually.
Yes.
Yeah, I'll have a chat with him because he has no idea what I'm going to say now. But we're going to try and make this. I'll actually no, I'll have a chat with him before I even announce anything on live, just in case he's like, "Hang on, wait, what?" So look, the point is we're going to try and hopefully make this a regular weekly stream where we review and recap the international games for you guys. Giving our thoughts and hope, and all that stuff. So anyway, nonetheless, we will still be watching these teams here play, and we're looking forward to them play as much as these other guys. To be fair with you, anyway, nonetheless, Pacific team previews: Samoa, Tonga, New Zealand in that order. First one being Toa Samoa Fanatics. I will tell you what, mate, they have come out, they have swung for the fences. They have
Yep.
not missed anything here. The inclusion of Payne Haas,
Yes.
Terrell May, Roger Tuivasa Sheck, Brian To'o, Jerome Luai. Obviously, a big out missing there. Stephen Crichton, their captain. But look, it can't be helped. He's undergone injury there, obviously, against the who was it? The Storm in the qualifying finals. But anyway, Toa Samoa Fanatics, give me your thoughts on the squad here because look, I'll tell you what, they've arguably got the best forward pack going, I reckon, in the international scene, in my
Yep.
opinion. Not the best, but who knows? I reckon, well, hey, some may say the best. I reckon they probably do have the best. But in saying that, Fanatics, give me your thoughts.
Yeah, look, it's probably one of the strongest Samoan sides, like for a while. I felt because I do feel like last year Samoa just had a lot of injuries. I know they weren't in the Pacific Championship, but they went over to play England, and their team wasn't, fully strength. I believe, they had a lot of injuries and players ruled out, and it was a bit of a put together to the team like you'd have it on the training field, and you just put it together. So I think Samoa, they're a lot stronger this year. They're a lot stronger, and it's going to be awesome to see how they go in this Pacific Championship. I know the big game for them is going to be against Tonga. And of course, they've got the Kiwis as well. So yeah, look, it's just I think it's a strong side. You got plenty of mixture of experienced players, a mixture of some good young talented players as well who've had good seasons in the NRL. Of course, you got Blaze Talangi, coming over from the Parramatta Eels, and he's had a really good season for Penrith. And also you got your Brian To'os as well. Probably for me one of the best wingers in the NRL by far at the moment, and probably say the best wing in the world if you look at rugby league world. He's the best wing in the world right now. So, and then you've got, of course, some new different names in there as well coming into the side as well. You got the likes of I think Dean Mariner. He hasn't played for. I'm pretty sure Dean Mariner. Yeah, he hasn't played for Samoa before, so this is his first opportunity. And some of these players that aren't really known, who've had good seasons in the NRL as a whole, and well deserved to get into the side as well. Isaac Tago, you got Jerome Law, of course, there from the West Tigers, experience there with him. So he's going to lead the way in the halves. You got Jaycee Tavanga, all these well-known players, especially. But you look at the forward pack; they're going to have a really good, strong forward pack as well. Um, and Payne Haas. How big of an inclusion is Payne Haas for Samoa? I reckon it's one of the hugest inclusions for the Samoan side. We know what a player Payne Haas is. We don't need to put too much praise on him because he's praised enough as it is in the rugby league world. So that was the big thing for me. Payne Haas, his decision to go and put on the Samoan jersey instead of put on the Kangaroos jersey. That's a huge one for me. Of course, you got RTS, the man himself, Roger Tuivasa-Sheck. But yeah, I like the looks of the Samoan team. I can't say anything negative about this team. That the Samoan coaching staff have gone to name for this Pacific Championship. It's going to be real interesting to see how they go. I think they're going to be a lot more competitive this time around than what they were last time when they were in the Pacific Championship before they went in it last year. So Yeah, it's a strong team. It's a strong squad, and yeah. What do you reckon about the Samoan squad?
I think you've really echoed it. Really, you've said everything. To be fair, Fanatics, but I reckon the squad here is looking very good. Again, I touched on Terrell May,
Yep.
Payne Haas, the likes of Jaden Suter, Josh Papali, aka Big Papa, right? Francis Molo from the Dragons. This is a very strong, very stoic looking team on paper. You touched on their backline there. I honestly, I think Tor Samoa maybe outside Stephen Crichton, right? Um,
Yes.
I think this is their strongest team available, as you touched on, in a few years, probably since the World Cup, the Rugby League World Cup.
Oh,
So I'm
definitely.
really excited to see how they sort of gel and mesh. Obviously, I'm imagining Luai and CHT will be in the halves there. Most likely, you know what? I sort of look at the back line,
Yeah.
and my only conclusion was RTS is going to be fullback.
Yeah, and that's what I had in my predicted Samoan team out, which I've got.
Please.
So
Yeah, give us your team, man. Please.
yeah, this one was actually hard. Like this is probably the first time I found the Samoan team a lot harder to pick than it has been over the past couple of years. Well, since the World Cup, like you say, like fullback. I've gone with Roger. I think Roger will go back to his position that he played for many years. In the NRL. So I've got Roger at fullback. The back line is really exciting and really interesting because you got Brian Toto on the wing, and then my other back line would play as Isaac Tago centres, and then you got Taylor May, and then my winger is Murray Talangi. So that's my back five for the Samoan side, and then my halves would probably say. This was tricky because I had at one stage I had CHT and Jerome Luai, but I've actually changed it around quite a few times. But I've come to the conclusion that I think Blaze Talangi will partner and Jerome Luai in the halves. So I've got Blaze Talangi in the
Yep.
six
No, that makes a lot
and
more
Jerome
sense.
Luai in the
That makes a lot
seven.
more sense. Yeah,
Yes.
that makes a lot
So
more
the
sense. Yeah.
so the
Yep.
ex Penrith connection there, the former Penrith connection there, but yeah, Blaze Talangi for me in the six, and Jerome Loy in the seven, and then Harris Savita is an interesting one because you can either have Harris Savita in the 14 off the bench, or you could have him as a hooker. You can play him
Yes.
as a nine, and I've actually gone with him at nine. Some people may not agree with me on this one, but I've actually gone with him at hooker because I feel like he has. I feel like he does have the passing game to play there. Um, his I don't know what you think on that one, but I actually gone with him at hooker there. And then my forward pack, it's a really strong forward pack. I've gone with Payne Haas, at prop, and then you got Jaden Sewer second row with Jeremiah Nunai, and then Tero May is my lock. So that is
Oh, oh,
my lock 13 there.
oh,
So
that's a hot team, bro. That is a hot
yeah.
team.
I've gone
Right.
some completely different selections there. Some people may have something different, but this is what I've gone with. But yeah, that's my 13, and then my bench. Now bench is quite tricky here. So I've got that guy, number 14. What's his name? Lee. The guy from what's his name? Bina. I can't say. I'll probably butcher this
Oh yeah.
pronunciation.
Give me
Um,
2 seconds, Fanatics. Oh,
yeah,
Benaya Ioelu.
Benaya. Yeah,
Ioelu.
Lo,
Yeah.
yeah.
Ioelu. Yeah.
He's my
Yeah.
14. Now I haven't really, to be honest, seen him play. So this is but just to base it off, needing a 14 off the bench because I don't think Samoa can have someone play a full 80 minutes at nine. Um, I think they
No.
need a bit of rotation there. But you can also put Jazz in there as well. But I don't think Jazz. Look, Jazz is a hooker. We know that he's not the best in that position. So you need a specialised hooker that can play there. So yeah, I've gone with him there in 14 there, and then Junior Paulo off the bench and Josh
Yep.
Papali'i, the two
Yep.
experienced forwards, and then My 17 now, this was tough, leaving out a player in particular because you look at their squad and who can come in, who's going to go out. And I'm going with Simi Sasagi from the Canberra Raiders. So he's my 17. So that's my predicted Samoa team list. But yeah, it's a tough one. It's a really tough one to pick based on, the players that they have, especially, you can name a few of those others that are in the squad, that were unlucky not to be in there for me. But yeah, what would you go with on this one? Do you have something completely different, or what do you think?
No. I don't per se. I mean, look, maybe I'll have Tavanga at
Yeah,
14 purely for experience.
yeah.
Iwelu, a rookie from the Roosters, has played only a
Mm,
handful of games. Only a handful of
true.
games. However, in
Yeah,
saying that, he's a specialist hooker.
yeah.
So yeah, it's one of those. It's one of those things that I'm sure the coach will weigh up. Um, I'm surprised with Terrell May's. Sorry, not Terrell May. Apologies, guys. Taylor May's name being popped up, considering he hasn't played a second of NRL footy. Aside from
True.
his name being dropped in rumors, aka Tigers, there's been no footy. I mean, look, we can go off what he's done. He's a back-to-back premiership winner. There's no denying that. We know what he can bring to the table. Absolutely. Um, but yeah, again, just naming him there, and I'm assuming he's going to be starting at centre besides
Yeah.
Tuckle. So yeah, look, it's outside of that, I've got no gripes with your selection really. Maybe Tavanga slotting in for Iwelu. Besides that,
Yeah.
I'm really it's decent. So all good there. Thanks again. Now we go into neighbouring island there, Tonga.
Yep.
And I'll tell you what, Tonga.
Huh.
I think, in my opinion, they've also much like Toa Samoa. They've just thrown everything at New Zealand and Samoa, including the kitchen sink with their forward pack in particular.
Yeah.
But
Oh.
this is a very interesting squad. There's a few interesting selections of players who've put their hands up as well. And I'm sure Fanatics and I will go over them. But nonetheless, just looking at this team here, I'll tell you what, how many more katoas can you have in one team, Fanatics? Not enough, first and
Oh.
foremost. But look, all jokes aside, I'm really liking the forward pack, the back line. Although I will say this, though, before you rattle off your team list, I'm not too much of a fan of the Utoika Manu pick. I'll tell you that much, guys. His performance against the Broncos left a very sour taste in my mouth, very sour. But nonetheless, he's here. Anyway, Fanatics, give us your thoughts on the squad, man, and tell us your 17.
Yeah, so as you say with Stefano, that's I know you don't agree with it, but obviously just looking at it, the season has been pretty good for the Storm, or besides of course that game, when it mattered, he probably should have. Obviously, there was a lot of media chat by Stefano off the field, and well, he didn't quite bring it on the field. You know, you gotta when you come out and say words, you gotta actually bring the performance on the field more so. But just looking at that Tongan squad, oh man, look, it's an amazing squad because you look at the players they've got. You got Paul Lamotte, you got Aden Fanua Blake, who is the captain for this Tongan side. Then you got the man himself. Of course, I'm going to be a little bit biased here, Warriors fan. Leka Halasima. How bloody good is it to have Leka in this Tongan side? He's had a great season. You look at it. For me, he probably should have won the NRL Rookie of the Year. I don't know how he didn't win it, to be honest. But I'm not going to go there because I'll have a bit of a long rant and then that will go forever. But Leka Halasima, he's had a brilliant season, and he deserves to be in that Tongan side, man. Just bloody brilliant. He's such a talent, very young as well, and well deserved. I think well deserved. So shout out to Leka Halasima there. And then you got you got all these other players, particularly Lehigh Hopewada, young talent. Aliasa Katoa, again, a great season. For the Melbourne Storm, bloody brilliant. Isaiah Katoa, look, I think for me, going during the NRL season, who was the best halfback? before Nathan Cleary had that strong back end of the season, it was Isaiah Katoa. From the beginning of the season, he was probably the most consistent halfback, and probably unlucky to miss out on that halfback of the year award in the Dally M's. So, and we know what a talent he is, and also the thing is, Isaiah Katoa's worked under Christian Wolf at the Dolphins, and Christian Wolf is the Tongan coach. He already knows Isaiah Katoa. They already know each other very well. So his combination for Tonga is going to be very important. If Tonga are going to win this Pacific Championship, he's going to be the key to Tonga's success. Looking at it, of course, Tonga. We know last year they made the Pacific Championship final, and they played Australia, and that was a successful Pacific Championship for them, even though they didn't win the final. But they did very well to win, to make it to the final. Of course, the Katoas. There's so many Katoas, like you said. I can rattle on and on and on about the Katoas. There's so many of them. Sione Katoa, and then you got Isaiah Yongi as well, another young talent from Parramatta there. And then you got Jason Tamalolo as well. Again, inspirational leader for Tonga. Always puts so much pride in the jersey. And then you got Robert Toya, debutant. Debutant this year. And look, it's well deserved as well. He played for the Maroons, and now he's representing Tonga as well. So yeah, it's a strong squad overall. I think it's. You look at the 4-pack, you look at the backs, they've got some good outside backs. Also, big shout out to Dimitri Vamawanga as well, another warrior. Big shout out to him, man. He has really shown a lot of improvement this season under Webby. He's come on leaps and bounds as well. Had some very good performances for the Waz throughout the season as well. Whether it be on the bench or starting, it's a really well deserved selection for him. So. Yeah, I'll go through my predicted Tongan side now. So, look, this is the side I've gone with. So, fullback, I've gone with Lehigh Hopawate for the fullback spot. On my wing, I've gone with Daniel Tupou, the veteran himself. Here you got my centres will be Tola Kola and Robert Toya. So, you've got two young players in the centres there. And Paul Alamote will be on the other wing. My halves, I've gone with Isaiah Yongi, 5'8", and Isaiah Katoa. So that's my halfback. And Adam Fanua Black will be my prop. Then you got hooker. Now, hooker is a bit difficult. I know. This is probably one area I'm still... Yeah, a little bit iffy for Tonga is probably hooker. I'm not... Look, they're solid selections, Halavili and you got Sonny Luke, they're solid players, but there's probably one debate I may have about this Tongan side and maybe a bit of a, weakness, endurance. I think it's probably the hooker spot, but, I've gone with Sonny Luke. Sonny Luke for me, and then Stefano Utukamanu is my other prop with Leka Haliasima in the second row. He will start. First game for Tongan, I reckon he'll start with Eli Katoa. And then lock will be Jason Tamalolo. So my bench, okay. Savila Havili, Dimitri Vai Mwanga, you got Funiaki is in my 16, and then Moate Fotoweka. So that is my Tongan side, 1 to 17. So what are your thoughts there on that one? What are your thoughts on the Tongan side that I've picked, and what changes would you make if you were picking the side?
Yeah, look, no, my question mark really revolves around the halves. To be fair with you,
yeah,
who did you in the halves? I think you had obviously had Isaiah Katoa, and who did you have in the number for the 5'8", Yongi, right?
Yeah, I've gone with Yongi.
Yeah, and I agree. So for me, you touched on it perfectly. Tonga's spine is always going to be our downfall, and I've told Fanatics this even in the World Cup when Tonga were playing. I told Fanatics the same thing. I know there are fans that are jumping left, right, and center. They're excited, but I said, unfortunately for Tonga, unless we can build and cement a decent spine, there's a reason why that position of your hookers, halves, and fullback are called the spine, because they really hold everything up. as we know,
Mm.
without your spine, it's it. It really is it. So look, outside of that, I like the squad. Also, again, as Fanatics touched on as well, big shout outs to Vai Maunga, who put up his hand to play for Tonga. I believe
Yep.
he is Tongan and Samoan.
Right.
So for him to put his hand up to play for Tonga, I really appreciate. And no, it's good. And Halasima and Toia, or Toya as people call him, Toia, they're going to be pivotal. You know, again, the young up and coming generation. I cannot wait to see. I'm excited. But in saying that, thank you again for that. Now we move on to these guys here, the land of Aotearoa,
Yep.
New Zealand. I think
Yes.
this team here, as we've seen on paper, Fanatics, this team, I think, apart from probably my gripe with maybe two selections, Fanatics has a gripe with only one
Mm.
selection. I think this team here is decent. They've got
Yep.
a very strong spine, to be fair with you, stronger than Samoa and Tonga's, to be very fair with you guys. Very strong. But yeah, look, this team here, the Kiwis team, has a lot of exuberance, experience, a bit of youth, some surprising misses. I'll probably touch
Mm.
on the next before I let you go. But Jordan Ricky, for example, not being in the squad, I was
Yes.
very surprised about. Jerome Hughes obviously injured. Nikorima, why he's not on the team, I'm not too sure. They've opted to select Kieran Foran, the Prince of Takapuna, as I like to say, as Fanatics knows, the Prince of Taka. Uh,
Oh.
Kieran Foran is, a bit of a swan song there for the Kiwis legend, one of the greatest Kiwis players to ever don the black and white jersey, in my opinion, in the history
Yeah.
of Kiwis rugby league, the history. Anyway, Fanatics, I'll leave it over to you, brother. What are your thoughts on the team? And then finish it off with your 17.
Yeah. So just looking at the Kiwi squad, look, it's the strongest Kiwi squad, that they've named, and look at go back to last year, the Kiwi squad had a lot of disruptions, especially with injuries. Of course, new coach coming on board with Stacey coming on board. It was really interrupted, I think, last season. So look at the players they've got. I think majority I do agree with. There is one player particularly I don't agree with being selected. So you got Dylan Brown. You'd probably say Dylan Brown will be partnering in the halves. No Jerome Hughes, which is a big out, which is unfortunate. Obviously coming off a really injury interrupted season in the NRL. Got through the grand final, but I believe he copped a bit of a knock to the injury an injury after the game. So that's why he decided to pull out of this Pacific Championship for the Kiwis. So, which is a real shame because if he played, I think Kiwis spawn would be a lot. The Kiwis spawn would be much stronger. So that's real disappointing. Which was really gutting. But obviously you got Kieran Foran coming in, the veteran himself. Could this be a fairy tale for Kieran Foran? We saw Sean Johnson get a call up, to the Kiwis when we weren't expecting a couple last year. So yeah, just the Kiwi squad in general, so many good, young talented players who've had good seasons in the NRL. You look at the likes of Casey McLean coming in, who had a very decent season for Penrith. And you've also got the regulars like Ronaldo Mulitalo's been there, Jeremy Marshall King, the forwards in particular, Tapane, Papali'i, Niokora, Nafahu White, and the big one, I think for me, is Xavier Wilson. Xavier Wilson, man, look at the season he had for the Bronx. And a player that's come, under the radar this year. I think in the NRL for the Bronx. I know the Broncos. You always talk about Payne Haas's, your Reese Walsh's, but Xavier Wilson's been, I think, been very underrated this season. So I do like the looks of that Kiwi side. I will say the one disagreement I have is Nelson Asofa Solomona. I don't think he should be in there personally, and I know some people may argue against what I'm saying here, but if you looked at what he's been doing this season in NRL Melbourne, so many times this year he has copped ill discipline. He's been really ill disciplined. Gives away the odd penalty, the silly penalty. And yeah, I just don't think I'd have him anywhere in the 17 personally, just in my opinion. I know he can bring that physicality, I get it, but I don't know. Like, he has not had the greatest season, to be honest. If you're going to pick players on form, I don't think he should be in there. That's just what I personally believe. Aaron Clark, man, Aaron Clark's been brilliant. We know what a season he's had for the Warriors. Best lock in the game this year as well, which was well deserved. I'm glad he picked up that award. I was very, very worried that he wasn't going to get it after Lecker, didn't get the Rookie of the Year. But I mean, Aaron Clark, man, he's had a good season for the Warriors, so I think he deserves, no doubt about it, being in that squad altogether. So. But yeah, and I think Chance Nigel Klukstad is another one. I know I said one, but I actually have another one, and I don't know if Chance is probably. Some people might have a go at me here, but I think Chance shouldn't be in there. Yeah, I know some Warriors fans will actually agree with me on this one, but some may don't agree. But Chance is, I love Chance. I love him as a player. He's a great guy in person as well. I've met him, but yeah, his form this year has not been, well warranted to get into this Kiwi squad, in my opinion. But it's that Stacey Jones is picking on loyalty, and players, experienced players. I don't want to say it, but he's in there, so it is what it is. But anyway, I'll go through my Kiwi team. So we'll go through it here. So predicted Kiwi side. So fullback, I'll go with Keno Kenny. So Keno Kenny from the Titans. Jermaine Asako would be on my wing, and my centres. This may be a bit interesting for a lot of people, but I'm going to go with Casey McLean to make his debut for the Kiwis. First game. And I'm going to partner him with Matt Timoko from the Raiders. So those are my two young centres, two inexperienced players at the Kiwis level, but I'm going to put them in there. And then Ronaldo Mulitalo will go on the other wing. And my halves will be Dylan Brown, 5'8", and Kieran Foran is going to get a start. He is going to go in there. He's going to be my halfback. Of course, Jerome Hughes was playing. It'd be Jerome Hughes and Dylan Brown as my halves combo, but he unfortunately isn't. So those are my halves. Then you got James Fisher-Harris, of course. And then Jeremy Marshall King, JMK, will be my hooker. And my prop, I'm going to go with Nafahu White. And my second row, I'm going to go with Britain Niakora. And I'm going to go with Isaiah Papali'i, and Joseph Tarpanay is my lock. Now, you may be wondering, where's Aaron Clark? Well, I've got Aaron Clark on my bench, actually. So I'm going to go put Aaron Clark on my bench with Moses Leota, Xavier Wilson, and I've gone with Scotty Sorensen. Will round out my 17. So that's my Kiwis lineup. So what were your thoughts on my Kiwis team there?
Yeah, look, I've got two thoughts that spring to mind straight off the bat. So Casey McLean has already played for the Kiwis.
Oh, he has?
He scored the 4 tries against Papua New Guinea.
Oh, true. I
debut.
forgot. My bad.
No, you're right. You're right.
It was that Papua New Guinea game. That's right. Yes, he definitely scored those tries, and I remember it. Now I remember it because we played Papua New Guinea in the other, in the game for relegation. Which, I'm not gonna go there. But geez, we thought we'd be playing that game.
Yeah, look, there's something I always tell fanatics about PNG games behind closed doors that I won't be repeating here. But it's absolutely no fault of your own that you have completely forgot about that, fanatics. Not your fault at all, buddy. Anyway, another thing that springs to mind is there was I didn't hear. I may not have heard the mention of Nafahu White.
Yes, I have
which
put
is
him in my
call. Oh, you have?
Yes,
did you select? You did.
I selected him in my starting lineup instead of on the bench. So
apologies, I must have missed that. So look, outside from that, I think look, I'm expecting Fozza to actually steer the ship here big time. I think this. Look, I thought about it long and hard, but look, I think Kieran Foran, this is probably his time to really take the Kiwis to that level. And look, if anyone can, it's him. We got to remember he's literally one of the strongest NRL players of all time, right? This guy's had injuries, surgeries, left, right, and center. But look, in saying that, I think that'll sort of do us for now, Fanatics. Ladies and gents, please, when you're tuning to this, stay tuned for another episode. What we plan to do, or I plan to do, and I'll talk Fanatics about after this, is actually coming on weekly post game, like on a Wednesday, post week 1, week 2, talking about all the international matches, Ashes tours included. So get ready for that. Get excited. But yeah, I think that probably just includes us. But Fanatics, was there any sort of last sort of word snippets you want to say before we hop off?
No, actually, I'd just like to, thank you for having me on your new channel, your new adventure, and I'd like to say good luck for this new content you're gonna bring out, and yeah, looking forward to doing more, shows with you. I know we've had a lot of history doing shows on my channel when we were, when you were doing Warriors content, I was doing Warriors content. It was great fun, and now you've started this whole new channel and journey, which I wish you all the best of. So yeah, looking forward to jumping on with you again, doing more shows, whether it's international rugby league, like we're planning on doing. But yeah, thanks for having me on, and yeah, it's been great fun.
You are absolutely welcome, Fanatics. And again, ladies and gents, before we go, that's NRL Fanatics there, guys. So he is a YouTuber. He's an Instagrammer. He's a TikToker. He does a little this, a little bit of that. He's a Facebooker. So he does a bit of this, a bit of that. And he's actually an ex-user as well. So guys, get amongst it. But I'm insane that Fanatics, thank you again. And look, you will be on regularly for international. And who knows, maybe even for a bit of Adelaide Rams chat as well. But I'm saying that, thank you again for being on here. We will see you again very soon. Take care, guys. Enjoy your international footy that's coming up. In mine and Fanatics' opinion, the best part of rugby league is international footy. So, yeah, take it easy, guys, and we'll see you next time. Ram it up. Take care.